So thank you all very much for inviting me today to talk to you about why it's important to listen to your students' and staff's voice about their experience of your digital environment. And I hope this will set you up and sort of maybe consider aspects of your talks later on when you're talking about the pedagogy, because we fully appreciate that pedagogy has to be first and foremost before you decide what technology or digital environment you want to use. So in that context, I'll start my presentation. Hopefully. So why do you need to worry about the experience then? I was curious the other day when I read this Wonkechi article by Michael Manders, where he talks about an experience economy. And I'm curious about this because I've been thinking about it for a while. And in there, he mentions that really this term first started at the turn of the century, just before really the rise of the internet. And there's a book by Joseph Pine and James Gilmore that explain about what they mean about the experience economy. And just after the turn of the century, I started working for a university in Bristol. And after a few years, I became a program manager on the student experience. And that's when I Googled to see how common the term of student experience was within the HE sector. And really, it was just on the sort of rise. So really, we start to see the number of people with student experience in their roles starting from about 2005 onwards. And that coincides with introduction of the NSS. So that's the National Student Satisfaction Survey. So I just want you to remember that. So if we believe in the concept of experience then, and I mean this as being explicitly stated, so obviously student experience has been around for a lot longer than 2005 or so, but it's just making it explicit and bringing it to the fore. So when we talk about the experience then, is it transformational or transactional? And this term is something that came out in some work that JISC was doing with the in collaboration with the sector about 10 to 15 years ago, when we were talking about digital literacies and digital capabilities. And the consultant Helen Beetham that we were working with talked about education being transformational and not transactional. So whilst the student experience does have some elements of transactional experience, education is very much about transforming individuals and their lives. So why is digital part of the experience? Well, obviously for the last nearly a year now, we've been relying on digital to deliver a lot of the education when we've had to move off campus and not be able to do it physically like we've been doing for many decades and centuries. And really, something that we've been talking about for a few years now is digital transformation. And JISC a few years ago started talking about the fourth industrial revolution, and that sort of coincides with the digital transformation concept that's a bit more popular now. And this is where from the sort of 60s to 80s, 1960s to 80s, we were digitizing analog formats. So we were converting paper into computers. Computer formatted information. And then from about the 80s onwards, we were doing a lot more in digitalizing processes. So we were using the information in different ways and automating it and making it more streamlined. But over the last few years, we've been talking about digital transformation And that's where we're taking digital information to the next level. And we're really embedding how we use digital and computers in different ways. And it's much more immersed in culture and workforces. And that's because of the affordances technology now gives us as a society. And so that's why I hope you agree that the digital part of the experience is really important to consider when you are designing your courses, to make sure that it can be as transformational as the way that you teach in the physical space as well. So how do you improve the quality of your digital transformational experience? Well, first of all, as with any transformation, you need to understand where you are and plan where you want to get to be. And here we can see there's a quote where different sectors like Gartner are recognising that a lot of organisations have been on this digital transformation for a few years, and this has been expedited by the COVID experience. And people have been starting, institutions, universities have been mapping out their student journey and putting in the digital touch points. But there's still a lot of work to do in this space. And one of the really important aspects to consider when you are doing all of this is, what is the experience like for those people that you are trying to transform? So what do the students and staff think about your digital environment? And this is where UCISA, the IT Directors Membership Group, came to JISC about 5 years ago now and said, we understand that a lot of our members are spending an awful lot of money on their digital infrastructure, but they haven't got a mechanism to understand what their students and staff think about the digital infrastructure and their experience of it. So could we collaborate with the sector to come up with a mechanism where universities and colleges can measure or get feedback from their staff and students on the digital infrastructure, and enable them to be able to compare and contrast across different organisations? And that's where we've been working with over 200 universities and colleges over the last 4 years. And we've come up with these surveys because that was decided to be the best overall mechanism to have a critical bit of jigsaw puzzle to be able to assess what staff and students are thinking about the digital environment.
2 minutes left, Ruth.
And so we've got these 4 surveys now for student, teaching staff, professional staff and researchers, where you can compare and contrast. And we've been analysing the surveys every year and produce reports that you can download from our website. And this year, the data was collected before lockdown and afterwards. So we've got some interesting insights into what the pandemic has meant for students and staff. And you can find that information in these reports. We also have one for professional service staff and students. And here you can see with the universities, it was about just under 50-50 before and after lockdown. Whereas in the FE sector, the majority was after lockdown. So those are the 4 themes, and I've got lots of information that I can share at another time because time's tight this time. But you can see the sorts of information and the evidence that you get back from running these surveys, because it's important to understand about their attitude and confidence in using the technology that's been given, especially during the pandemic where everybody has had to use technology. So it hasn't been optional like it was before. It was critical. And so everybody has been working really hard in upskilling to be able to deliver using technology. But it's you can see the evidence here that is really important to inform strategic leadership, and developing your pedagogy before deciding what technology that is best suited to deliver that teaching and learning that you want to provide your students. And then what sort of environment and infrastructure would best support you all. So I hope this whistle-stop tour has enticed you to want to find out more about the work that we've been doing and see whether your institution has been involved. So please do join our GISMail community of practice, or get in touch with me if you'd like to know any more about these reports that we've been producing. But as I've said, they are freely available on our website for you to download. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you very much. I'm just going to quickly ask my manager, Dan Clark, if there are any questions in the chat that have been asked.
Nothing's come up. Thank you, Ruth. Nothing that has come up in the chat, but I have a question, and it's more a broad question, Ruth. I just wonder what, given your experience, what you think are the biggest challenges the higher education sector faces in transforming to embracing the digital rather than being sort of caught between the two. What do you think is the single biggest challenge or set of challenges?
Well, I think it is really getting it embedded in the culture. So lots of people have been talking about how the pandemic has really expedited what people were planning to do anyway. And we can certainly see those that have managed to sort of pivot or change from teaching in campus in face-to-face environments into the digital are the ones that were really had a good foundation. And so whereas before we've always said that technology won't replace teaching, there is a concern if you don't use technology at all in your teaching, whether you might be replaced, not by technology, but by other colleagues that can both use technology as well as the face-to-face inspirational sort of experiences. And that's because society's moved along. So the point of my talk was about and the experience is because expectations have risen in terms of what kind of experience that they will be getting because of their experience in everyday life and in work as well. So it's trying to get that sort of culture along. It's going to be, the challenge will be to bring everybody along. So I think it might have even been in one of these earlier presentations that you've been giving where they talk about, it's like everybody's had to jump in a car. Some people were already perfectly capable of driving at high speeds along motorways, but everybody has had to jump in and get moving. And so how do we get everybody to move along and improve their skills and capability at pace and keep this momentum going? And there's lots of advice and guidance out there. And we've got certainly another service called Building Digital Capability, again, with lots of free information about frameworks and how to structure it. So the challenge is how to use your time to be able to recognize what it is you could be working on in order to make those sorts of enhancements going forward.
That's great. Thank you, Ruth. Phil, I don't know whether we've got time for any further questions, but
we don't, I'm afraid. We're going to have to move on in the interest of keeping to time. But
there's
thank
a couple
you so
more
much,
questions
Ruth.
in the chat. If Ruth could have a look at those, that'd be great.
Okay, will do. But please do contact me offline if anybody is interested in any of the information I've been talking about.